My sister framed me for cheating. I lost everything in one night. I lost my fiancé and my family in one night because of a lie my sister staged in a crowded rooftop bar. If you've ever had your life split cleanly into before and after, you'll understand why I still rehearse the details in my head. Like if I tell it right, the universe will send me the version where none of it happened. My name is Arya, and I grew up in the near suburbs of Chicago in a house that always smelled like coffee, furniture polish, and my mother's anxiety. My dad was the steady one, quiet jokes, quiet shoulders, quiet hands fixing everything that broke. My mom believed in appearances the way people believe in gravity. She ironed napkins for holidays. She organized family photos by color. She kept a running list in her phone called Things We Don't Talk About, as if shame could be managed like a pantry. Then there was my sister, Tessa, 2 years younger, the sort of pretty that got her out of late fees and curfews, the sort of charming that made teachers forget she never did the reading. If I brought home an A, the response was of course you did. If she brought home a C+, the table turned into a Broadway stage. I learned early that some people are sons, others just learn how to orbit. I don't want this to be a story about sibling rivalry. It's not that simple. I loved my sister. I loved watching her walk into a room and make it brighter. I loved when she texted me pictures of a dress and asked, "Be honest." I loved thinking that when we were older we'd be the kind of sisters who share recipes and hand each other our babies like casseroles. I met Lucas at a volunteer build for Habitat for Humanity. He was painting trim with the concentration of a brain surgeon. I made a joke about how our future house would be off-white forever because he'd be too careful to finish a wall. He smiled like he didn't know how yet and said, "Only if you promise not to change the color every 6 months." He had a face made for trust. 3 years after that first half-painted morning, he got on one knee in front of the Art Institute lions, and my yes came out before I remembered to cover my mouth. We picked a date 16 months out. Not because we wanted to wait, but because weddings cost like a second-hand car and we wanted to do it without debt. My mother launched herself into planning like it was her second career. She had binders with tabs for tabs. She called the venue coordinator my dear as if kindness could be stapled to a discount. "Tessa?" She floated through it all with this distracted smile, like she was watching a show and waiting for a better one to come on. It was Tessa's idea to go out for a micro-bachelorette. "Nothing wild, just a little sparkle," she said, which we all know is sister code for please put on mascara. She booked a table at the Meridian, a glass and steel rooftop downtown where people take photos of their drinks because the sky is free. The night of, I wore a white sundress because Tessa told me it would be cute for pictures. She wore blush pink and a high ponytail that made her look 12 and perfect. The elevator doors opened to laughter and glassware. I remember the way the wind moved the string lights. I remember thinking, this is going to be a memory I keep forever. We found our reserved table near the railing. Tessa was vibrating, the way she does when a secret is trying to chew through its leash. She kept checking her phone. I asked who we were waiting for. "Friends," she said lightly, like friends happen the way weather happens. A tall guy with sleeve tattoos and a too-white smile appeared out of nowhere. "Tess." He kissed her cheek. "You must be Arya," he said my name like he'd practiced. "I'm Zane. We have 10 mutual friends, so I'm basically family." I laughed because it was easier. He pulled up a chair. Tessa excused herself to say hi to someone and disappeared into the crowd. Zane asked me if I'd tried the Meridian's famous lavender martini. I said I didn't like lavender. He said, "You don't taste it, you remember it," which is exactly the kind of nonsense people say right before you end up crying in a lift. I asked for water. He ordered me one anyway. We chatted about nothing. He had a job at a media agency curating experiences, which as far as I could tell meant convincing brands to pay for things people were already going to do. He laughed at my jokes. I laughed at his. The city glowed like a planet in a museum case. Across the patio, Tessa reappeared with her phone up and a grin like Christmas morning. "Smile," she shouted. Zane leaned in and slung an arm around me fast, too fast. I flinched back on instinct and he said, "Relax, it's just a picture." Click. He held on a beat longer than a photo needs. I pried his hand off and said, too brightly, "I don't pose with strangers." I texted Lucas, "We're at the Meridian. Come say hi?" Then I remembered I hadn't told him where we were going. My phone buzzed with delivered, no response. I put it face down because I'd promised myself I wouldn't be that person, eyes half inside a screen while life does tricks for her. Tessa returned and reclaimed Zane with a claim that didn't wear a label. We ordered fries and ate them like no one was watching Salt. An hour in, she announced she had to check on the hostess about something. Zane offered to get me a fresh drink, anything but lavender. I said water again. He laughed like he'd cracked a code. When he came back, he didn't sit in his chair, he slid into the one beside me. "You look tense," he said softly. "Do you want the congratulations kiss now or at midnight?" "Excuse me?" I said, because sometimes you need to give people one last chance to be better than they are. He leaned closer, breath a bright spray of something citrus and something cheap. "You're about to marry a man who wears beige socks. Let me give you one last memory." I turned my face away and said, "No," loud enough for the table behind us to feel awkward. He smirked like I'd said maybe. The thing about people like Zane is they're not used to hearing the final kind of no. He grabbed my jaw and tried to kiss me. I shoved him hard enough to jolt the table. Water sloshed. My chair scraped. My heart made a noise like a dropped glass. "What is wrong with you?" I said, wiping his breath off my cheek with the back of my hand. We didn't notice the elevator ding. We didn't see who walked out until the air around us changed shape. Lucas. He stood at the edge of our table, eyes scanning the scene like photos were falling into a slot. Zane's hand hovering near my face. Me flushed and furious. Tessa 2 steps behind him with a fist pressed to her mouth like a person watching a car crash decide whether to scream. Arya, Lucas said, voice quiet the way ice is quiet. What is this? I said, he tried to kiss me. The words felt both too small and too loud. Zane stood up fast, hands raised in the universal sign for I'm guilty but I own a mirror. Whoa, dude. She kissed me, he said smoothly, as if he'd been handed a script. We've been flirting all night. Ask Tess, she saw. Tessa nodded, eyes big with manufactured sorrow. I went to find you because I thought maybe, you should know. The floor isn't supposed to tilt in real life. It did anyway. The world narrowed to Lucas's face. I reached for his hand. He stepped back like my touch burned. He didn't shout. He didn't throw a drink. He just looked like someone had walked into his chest and rearranged furniture without asking. I need to go, he said. I'm not. I can't. Lucas, I said, because sometimes a name is the life raft. Please. Tessa put a hand on his arm and said, I'm so sorry you had to see that, and I saw it. I saw the wire. I saw the way she angled her body to catch the moment. I saw the glint of her phone lens. I saw the trap I had been too in love to detect. Lucas left. The elevator swallowed him. Tessa exhaled like a confession, then turned to me with that tight, injured smile she uses when she's about to win. We should go, she said. You've had enough. I didn't follow her. I ran for the stairs. The city air slapped my face awake. I called Lucas. Straight to voicemail. Texted, he grabbed me. Please call. 3 dots. Disappeared. Nothing. When I got home, my key didn't fit. The security bolt was on. I knocked until my knuckles hurt. My mother opened the door exactly 2 inches, as if decency could be measured with a ruler. You can sleep at Tessa's, she said without preface. Lucas came by. He showed us the pictures. We are devastated. He tried to kiss me, I said for the 5th time that hour. I pushed him away. Tess invited him. Why would I? We're not discussing this on the porch, she said crisply, like I was a delivery driver who'd overstayed. You've embarrassed us. The neighbors saw you come home at 1 a.m. with your dress wrinkled. My father's voice drifted from the foyer. Linda, let her in. She raised the bolt, stepped aside with the pained flourish of a woman offering charity. My father stood with his hands deep in his pockets, as if he'd learned he had nothing useful to hold. He looked at me like he wanted to believe me and couldn't remember how. On the kitchen table lay my engagement ring and its little velvet square like a dead insect. A note in Lucas's handwriting, I can't marry someone I can't trust. I sat down on the floor. Because sometimes the floor is closer than faith. The next 48 hours are a sum I still can't do. Tessa sobbing in the living room, telling my mother she never wanted this while she forwarded screenshots to group chats. My mother informing relatives before calling me a liability. Lucas's mother texting me I'm disappointed in you. My father making tea he didn't drink. By Sunday afternoon, I had a suitcase. Not because I packed, because my mother put one at the door. It's for the best, she said with the brittle brightness she reserves for funerals. You can stay with friends until you decide what you're going to do. What I'm going to do. I repeated. The phrase glowed like a sign outside of a road I hadn't planned to take. Apologize, Tessa said softly from the couch. Her eyes were dry. Her hands were steady. Tell Lucas you made a mistake. We all do. Don't make a scene. I thought about every moment in our childhood when I handed her the bigger half, the front seat, the last slice, the last word. I thought about how many times I made myself smaller so she could be exactly big enough. I picked up the suitcase and walked out into the warm, noisy afternoon. She didn't follow. I stayed on Nina's couch for a week. Nina, who has been my friend since sophomore year biology, where we killed a cactus succulently in 17 days and blamed the fluorescent lights. She handed me a key and a pint of mint chip and a sentence I repeated to myself every time I felt the floor sway. You did nothing wrong. I found a job at Stovetop, a neighborhood restaurant with the kind of food that makes people text you what was that. I started as a hostess with the smile you put on when you need rent due dates to behave. I learned to pronounce wine names without apology. I learned how to steer a Friday night crowd around an understaffed kitchen. I moved into a tiny studio with a view of a brick wall and a stubborn patch of sky. I made the bed every morning because visual proof of order felt like a kind of prayer. My mother didn't come to see the apartment. My father did once, under the pretense of being in the area. He handed me a box of groceries he'd chosen like an apology, pasta, sauce, cereal, the good tea. He hugged me in the doorway and said, you know I love you. I said, I know, and what I meant was, I know you don't know how to choose me. The months slowed. The ache got quieter like an injury you learn to carry. I stopped checking Lucas's socials. I stopped waiting for my mother's name to light my screen. I learned all the servers' birthdays at Stovetop and how to sneak them soft cake from the pastry station. I laughed again, first with the sound turned down, then fully. I learned to walk around the hole without falling in. Year 1 passed. Then year 2 did what years always do with enough breakfasts and shifts and Tuesday nights, it passed too. Sometimes the universe claps in the middle of your shift. It was a Sunday brunch service, the kind where everyone orders the same Benedict word at the same time, when I saw Tessa through the front window. She was standing on the sidewalk outside, hands tucked into the sleeves of a cream sweater, eyes rimmed with the brand of sadness that photographs well. "Do you have a second?" She asked, the air near my shoulder. "No," I said. Then I said, "You have 1 minute." She didn't order anything. She didn't sit. She said, very carefully, "I got married last weekend." I blinked because that wasn't the sentence I thought she'd practice. I pictured a white dress and a slow-motion kiss and my mother's thrilled noise and Lucas's absence. "It rained," Tessa continued, as if weather might warm me. "Right after the vows. They say it's good luck." She looked up at me, her face going soft in a way I recognized from childhood, right before she asked for my favorite sweater. I told him. "Who?" I said, because sometimes you ask a question you already know the answer to because the answer sits better in someone else's mouth. "Lucas," she said. I told him the truth. About that night. About Zane. About the photos. I told him I set it up. That I texted him from your phone to get him to come. That I told Zane too, make it look bad. I told him I'm sorry. I told him I wanted you gone because I hated how everyone looked at you, like you were the good one. She took a breath like it hurt. I said the words out loud, Aria. I said I lied. For a second I went deaf. If you've ever waited for an apology that never came, you know this, when it finally arrives, it is not a warm bath. It is an earthquake in a town you rebuilt. My voice came back slow. "Why now?" She swallowed. "Because he asked me if there was anything I needed to say before we started forever. And I heard your name in my head like a fire alarm." "Did he forgive you?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "He left." She reached for my hand like we were still the kind of sisters who could reroute blood flow through fingers. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were small, but they weren't nothing. "I'm so sorry. I was awful. I was jealous. I wanted what you had, so I broke it." I looked at the woman who had once stolen my lip gloss and now said she had stolen my life. I thought about how many times I had practiced screaming at her in the shower, about how many times I had pictured throwing water on her phone and watching the lie short out. My mouth surprised me. "Thank you for saying it," I said. "You don't get anything else from me today." She nodded like she'd expected that mercy. She left a white envelope on the host stand, a letter I didn't read for 3 days because I kept trying not to shake. Then she went out into the sunshine and disappeared into a group of people who did not know her as a season that never ends. I wish I could tell you that's where the story turned sweet. That my phone lit up with apologies in a sudden, clattering rain. That the universe counted the payments and returned what it owed. 2 days later, Lucas walked into Stovetop. I knew it was him before I looked up because my body still keeps the shape of standing next to him. He wore a gray sweater and the careful face you put on when you're not sure if you've become the bad guy in someone else's story. He asked if we had a table for one. I said we had 1,000. He sat near the window like I had when it was my turn to wait. I didn't send a server. I took his water myself because some breaks you attend in person. His hands shook when he thanked me. "I heard you talk to Tessa," I said. My voice wobbled on the name. He nodded. "I did. I asked her if there was anything. If there was anything we'd both look back on and wish had been said. She told me the truth about that night." His eyes were the same, which is one of grief's fiercest tricks. "Aria, I am so sorry." I stood there with my apron tied too tight. I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to ask if he slept well those first few months. I wanted to ask if his mother ever looked at him and said, "We got it wrong." I wanted to ask if he liked his gray sweater before or after he became the man who didn't believe me. "Why didn't you ask me?" I said instead. "Why didn't you let me finish a sentence?" He closed his eyes like there was light he didn't deserve. "Because I thought I had all the evidence I needed. Because the photos were convenient, and the truth was complicated. Because she was your sister and I thought," he stopped. "Because it was easier to believe a lie that hurt less than the idea I didn't know the woman I loved. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed to say I'm sorry for not choosing you when it mattered." A family with toddlers sat down behind him. One of the kids threw a spoon and laughed like a cartoon villain. Life kept going in the next 10 square feet. "I'm not the woman you left," I said carefully. "I've had to learn how to be a person separate from your trust." "I can see that," he said, and the way he said it made me want to both cry and throw a salt shaker. "If you ever want to talk, outside of a brunch rush, I would like to listen. That's all." I nodded toward his menu because work is a good wall when you need one. "Do you want the ricotta pancakes or the frittata that will change your views on zucchini?" He laughed gently. Surprised me. I brought him pancakes. I didn't sit with him. Before he left, he folded a paper napkin and wrote a phone number on it like we were 17. "No pressure," he said. "Just a line you can cut if you want to." He left the napkin tucked under the water glass. I didn't touch it for an hour. I didn't throw it away either. 3 evenings later, my father showed up at my building with a plastic grocery bag I recognize now as his apology suitcase. He asked if I had 10 minutes. He looked smaller around the eyes in a way that made me worry. "I told your mother I'm filing for divorce," he said in my little living room, standing like a man in a hallway. "I should have done it years ago. After Tessa told us the truth, your mother called it drama and asked her to delete any text that made the family look bad. I realized I have spent my whole life protecting a picture frame instead of the people in it. I sat down because the floor is still my first witness. She believes Tessa? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She believes what keeps the house neat, he said. I am done with neat if it means pretending my daughter is a liar. His voice cracked for the first time I can remember. I am sorry I didn't stand by you. I am sorry I let your mother's fear be louder than your voice. I am sorry I let a man return your ring to our table and didn't throw him out by his wrists. He took a breath that was all the way in. I want to earn my way back, if you'll let me. We sat at that scratched thrift store table and ate the cookies he brought like they were bread in a church. We talked about small things at first, weather, the leak under his sink, the neighbor who steals our building's recycling bin every other Wednesday. Then we talked about the bigger ones, how to build a relationship from rubble, how to apologize without expecting a parade, how to make a holiday that doesn't require costumes. My mother texted me 3 days later, your father has lost his mind. Your sister is trying to move past the past. If you had any class, you'd help. I stared at the screen until my face felt hot, then put the phone on Do Not Disturb and ate pasta over the sink like a queen in a small kingdom. What do you do with a confession that arrives 2 years late and 4 lifetimes long? There isn't a manual. There isn't a 7-step program where step 5 is grieve the version of your life you'll never get back. There's just the day you're in and the person across from you and the person you're trying to be. Tessa sent letters. Not one, several. She wrote about envy like it was a fever she'd finally sweat out. She wrote about a therapist who asked her what love looks like when it isn't a competition. She wrote about being a wife and fearing she might be a mirror of our mother if she didn't pay attention. I read every word. I put them in a shoebox. I did not reply. Lucas texted twice, once to say he started therapy because believing lies felt like a habit I didn't know how to break, once to say he'd be out of town for work and could we maybe meet when he was back. I saved his number. I didn't call. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because some roads must be walked slowly if you don't want to end up in the same ditch. My father and I started seeing each other on Sundays. Parks, cheap coffee, a hardware store where he taught me the difference between 4 screws that look exactly the same until you need the right one. He showed up for me the way I used to dream he would, on time, without excuses, hands open. I mailed my engagement ring back to Lucas's mother with a note that said simply, please keep this for a woman who is believed. She wrote back a week later, I am sorry. We were wrong. She included a recipe for the lemon bars she'd made the first time I visited their house, as if sugar could carry an apology where words couldn't reach. I baked them. I ate one sitting on the floor. I added more powdered sugar than the recipe called for because I needed a little extra softness that night. You probably want a tidy ending. I do too. I want to tell you I forgave everyone and we threw a picnic where even the ants respected boundaries. I want to tell you Lucas and I sat across from each other in some low-lit, quiet place and built a new bridge with better wood. I want to tell you my mother texted, I'm sorry, full stop, period, no qualifiers. Here's what I can tell you. I forgave myself. That's what took the longest. I forgave the version of me who didn't see the trap until she was already inside it. I forgave the girl who begged a door to open when she should have turned and walked away. I forgave the silence that followed me around for months like a stray dog. I am not angry all the time anymore. That feels like someone took a heavy coat off my shoulders. I still work at Stovetop, and I still love how Sunday mornings smell like cinnamon and coffee and fresh starts. I got promoted to front of house lead because I'm good at moving people around a room without making them feel moved. I started saving for a culinary certificate I might never pursue just because the idea of choosing something for reasons that are mine tastes better than anything on the menu. Sometimes I pass the Meridian on a bus and don't feel like I'm about to disappear. That feels like victory enough for one afternoon. My father and I went to the lake last weekend. We sat and watched people pretend winter would never happen. He asked me if I wanted to spend Thanksgiving with him this year. I said yes. He cried without making a story out of it. We planned a menu that included my mother's stuffing because recipes can be inherited even when loyalty is not. I don't know what I'll do about Lucas. Maybe we'll talk. Maybe we'll stay kind from far away. Maybe someday we'll stand in the same grocery store all debating pasta sauce and laugh at how regular the world can be after an apocalypse. I don't know what I'll do about Tessa. Maybe time will sand the edges until I can hand her a slice of cake at some future birthday and mean it. Maybe not. Maybe the bravest thing I can do is let some bridges stay ashes. I do know this. The night my sister set me up, I thought my life was over because the people I loved most believed a stranger's performance more than my voice. 2 years later, the person I believe most is myself. The person I show up for is myself. The person I don't abandon on a porch is myself. If you've never been disbelieved, you won't know how loud that quiet is. If you have, maybe you hear me across this page and nod. Maybe you're sitting in a tiny apartment with a view of a brick wall and a bite of lemon bar that tastes like a promise you made to yourself. Maybe you're holding a napkin with a phone number you haven't decided what to do with, and maybe it's okay not to know the ending yet. I used to think closure came when everyone else admitted I was right. Now I know closure is what you call the moment you stop asking their version of the story to love you back. I am okay. More than okay most days. I wake up. I make the bed. I fold napkins at work into shapes that will be undone by mouths that will never know the names I had to let go. I go to sleep in sheets I washed myself, in a room where the only voices are mine and the ones I invite. I am building a life that cannot be staged by anyone else's hands. That's the whole thing. It's not neat, but it's mine.